Welcome to the Golden Age of Cardboard podcast, where we remember a time when stacks of cards were held together with rubber bands and Mickey Mantles were put in bike spokes. We hope you will enjoy and reminisce as you come along with us as we tell stories about the baseball cards from the Golden Age of Baseball. We will examine the state of the vintage baseball card market and talk to some of the greatest collectors in the hobby. You won't be hearing us talk about any chrome or shiny cards here. Now, to take you on this retrospective journey, here's your host, direct from the shallow end of the gene pool, my son, Mike Moynihan.
Yo and hello everybody, Mike Moynihan here, and welcome to another episode of the Golden Age of Cardboard podcast. I am here today with my long time but long missing co-host, Andy. She blinded me with refractors on YouTube, and one of my great hobby friends. We are going to talk today about the National. Andy, does that sound like fun?
That sounds like a lot of fun. There's a lot to talk about.
There is a lot to talk about. I want to apologize first to everybody. It's been several weeks since I did my last podcast, and that was because I was just so busy leading up to the National, and I wanted to make sure I did this show justice, and a lot of guys that I wanted to talk to were also very busy, so it just made for, hey, I'll just take a self-imposed couple of week break, but we're back. Hopefully going to be starting to do episodes again on a regular basis, and maybe I can convince Andy to come join on every once in a while as we keep moving forward. I missed you, Andy. What can I say?
Yeah, it's good to be back. And to your point about, being off for a couple of weeks, it's good to take a break from time to time just to kind of refresh a little bit. And I think anybody that went to this show, even though you would think that you would need a break when you get back, you're just fired up to talk about stuff, right?
Yeah, I wanted to do this. We're recording this on the Monday after the National, and I think I've had just enough time, and maybe you feel the same way, to reflect on some things. But I also want to share my thoughts while they're still relatively fresh in my mind, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the older we get, the quicker it is to forget just how great this show in particular was, and it's just a great time, man.
If you could use one word to describe the National, what would it be this year, 2021?
Wild.
I was going to use the word exhausting, but
wild, and then I guess the other word I actually thought about was chaotic.
Yeah. Those would be great superlatives to use to describe this year's National. Just what are your general thoughts about how it went in Chicago? General thoughts about your experience, the show, everything. Go. You only have 45 minutes. Go.
Well, if you've seen some of my recap footage, it took me an hour to go through everything, so 45 minutes may not be long enough, but
that's
I'll try.
Why I limited you. That's why I was intentional about, okay, dude, we've only got, this is a 45-minute to an hour show. So
right. So the first thing, and I think all of us expected this, was the crowds, right? I mean, it was a lot more people than what we had seen at previous shows. So that was the first thing, and then I think you'll get into some of these other things a little bit later, so I don't want to spoil some of the things we're going to talk about. But the crowd, of course, the number of young people that were in attendance, that was I don't know what percentage the actual crowd as a whole was up at this show, but I would say the number of young people was up way higher percentage wise even than the overall crowd. A lot more diversity as far as, males, females. Those are just a couple of quick things that pop into my head right off the bat. What are some of the things that kind of, I guess, maybe surprised you a little bit?
I expected the big crowds. I didn't expect I didn't expect it to feel as crowded as it did, if that makes sense. I expected big crowds, but it felt really crowded. You know, just maneuvering around some of the tables was incredibly difficult. And for me, and we're going to focus this show on kind of the show from a vintage baseball collectors type perspective. So if you listen to this show, I'm going to be talking about the stuff that people who listen to this show like, I think. And it was just difficult to maneuver around. And at times, not all the time for sure, but during those kind of we'll call them prime times, you know, kind of after lunch, afternoons, it was difficult. And again, not surprised at the number of people, surprised at how crowded it felt. Then I would say I was surprised at the mass diversity of prices, even on singular cards. You could go from one end of that show to the other and see the same card, same grade, prices all over the place in terms of what the sticker price was on the card.
Yeah, there was you could really tell from, you know, your first walk throughout the show, you could really tell the dealers that were wanting to sell versus the ones that didn't mind taking their inventory home with them. Like you said, like, you know, just on a card, for instance, like just for an example, like let's just say like a PSA 5 Hank Aaron 54 Topps rookie. Like Mike said, you could go from one end of the show to the other, and there could be thousands of dollars difference in the price of that card. So that's why people always say for people heading to the National, never buy the first one you see, because you're going to see stuff like that, especially you're going to see several of them at the show. And the first one you see may be the highest priced one. So yeah, you don't want to hop on that for sure.
Well, a point I will make to every vintage collector out there, if you've been to the National before, or especially if you haven't, you can find pretty much every card there. It's difficult to have a card, maybe not every, well, that's probably not true. Just about every card you can think of from 1900 to throughout the vintage era of 1979, 1980, you can find it there. It's, are you going to find it at a price and a condition that you're comfortable buying that card, right? I mean, everything's there. There's thousands of vintage. I mean, the percentage of vintage to modern, right, is way different. Do you want to touch on that first point, or do you, and then I'll move on to another comparison? But
yeah, let's touch on that.
Card is there.
Yeah. So I think, and the thing is, most every card is there available, right? And the ones that, there's always going to be exceptions to that, but let's be honest, the ones that aren't there, I mean, we couldn't afford those anyway, right? So
good point.
I mean, you could say, oh, well, I didn't see this card, but I mean, could you really afford it if it was there? Probably not. So yeah, there was a lot of cool stuff there. Like I can't remember just off the top of my head, like how many 52 Topps mantles I saw, but it was probably, I don't know, man. What would you say? Like somewhere in the 10 range, maybe? That's kind of the ballpark I was thinking.
I must have seen 30 if I
really
saw one. Oh yeah.
Okay. Well,
I saw quite a few of them, and they range, right, in condition, of course.
Sure. Yeah, and I'm sure there's probably a couple of tables that I'm not remembering that probably had several, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, everything's there in a spectrum of grades, and kind of there's things to meet everybody at every level, whatever kind of collector level you're at. If you can't find it there, and you're a kind of person that likes to buy in person, then you're not going to find it unlikely to find it at any show. And I like that. I like that there's that much to choose from. I like when, and I'll bring this up later, one of the key cards I was looking for was a 53 Bowman colored Mickey Mantle. And I found a bunch of them I liked that there were a lot of them to choose from, different dealers, different grades, different price levels, because that gives me the opportunity to bargain, right? And leverage.
Yeah. And so here's a question for you, Mike. You know how most every show will have like some sort of theme to it as far as like, you know, which players were hot at this particular show. So was there a player, a vintage player from this show that you just kind of felt there was maybe a little bit more buzz around than most others?
I saw more mantle cards than anything, like super great mantle collections of people selling them. But I would say the cards that I got asked by my friends the most about to look at were Willie Mays cards.
Okay. That's a good one there. And that's one of the people that I was thinking of as well. And then the one that I heard mentioned a lot at this show was Jackie Robinson.
Yes.
It seemed like a lot of people were really looking for Jackie Robinson, but yeah, definitely, you know, your normal people, Willie Mays, Mickey Mantle, you know, of course, Babe Ruth. Yeah, players like that. But I think Jackie Robinson seemed to be particularly sought after at this show, just from what I had heard from people.
Ironically, if you're watching on YouTube, I'm wearing my Jackie Robinson t-shirt right now, so that seems appropriate. And I got a Jackie Robinson 50 Bowman card graded at the show by PSA. So yeah, Jackie Robinson is hot in the hobby, and the only thing I can say about that is it's about damn time. He has been, I think, long overlooked in the hobby, and he's getting some records going. Wow, this guy was pretty great, not just obviously as a baseball player, as a human being, and his impact on the game transcends a lot of time. And you can't deny Jackie's impact on baseball.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, that makes a lot of sense. The Jackie thing. I saw a lot of Jackie Robinson cards, and I saw a lot of dealers that were very proud of their Jackie Robinson cards and priced them accordingly.
Of course. Yeah. And I think, you know, you obviously had the one that you had picked up and got graded. And I can think of at least one more, you know, guy that's kind of, you know, in our group of friends that picked up a Jackie at the show. And I know several other people that were looking for them. Maybe, you know, maybe those museum type prices that you're talking about may have prevented them from actually purchasing one. But yeah, there was definitely a lot of people that were intrigued with Jackie at this show.
Yeah, and there's something else about this show that I think makes it unique. You and I have both attended probably the second largest show in the country, and that's the Dallas Card Show, especially in the last year or so. That's become the second national, the national's little brother, right? In terms of number of dealers, number of tables, number of people attending. And I get a very different vibe in Chicago than I do in Dallas. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, and it's interesting because, like I said from the top, the crowd at this show was way younger than I've ever seen during the times I've been to the National, and the crowd at the Dallas show is a pretty young crowd as well. But yeah, there was way more vintage here at the National than what you see in Dallas. And I guess maybe you can attribute some of that to, you know, different types of dealers, I guess. A lot of these dealers that set up at the National, I feel like a lot of them, maybe this is the only show that they do each year, and they've been doing it for a long time. So maybe that plays into it. What are your thoughts on that?
Totally agree with that. You've got a lot of dealers that do both shows for sure, right? And other, they just do the show circuit. But I would say the Dallas right now, I feel like I'm getting bumped.
Yeah, you were buffering there for a second, but you're good.
Yeah. I feel like at the Dallas show, it's about 80% modern, 20% vintage. And I would say, I don't know that it's completely flipped at the National, but it's probably 60 vintage, 40 modern at least. And you've got these dealers that have been doing the National for 20 plus years, and that's what they do. And it's a very interesting dynamic to see as you walk into the show, and it's hard to describe it if you've never been there, but you've got the long-term dealers are on one end, and as you progress backwards through the convention hall, you get to the guys with less tenure on the dealer list, and their stuff tend to be younger dealers. They tend to be guys that have more modern. So I spent a lot of my time. It's not that they don't have vintage in the newer area and that the older guys don't have modern, but it's this huge kind of just descent through cardboard history if you walk down the aisle towards the back where the newer dealers are. And that's an interesting dynamic that is relatively recent. I mean, we saw that some in 2019, but really here in 2021, it made a huge difference. You could see the discrepancy between the different types of dealers. You agree with that?
Yeah, and what I was going to say, I feel like a lot of like, let's say the full-time dealers, the ones that travel to a lot of these shows, the ones that are doing shows, every couple of weeks or something throughout the country. I feel like those type of dealers, like even if they are primarily modern, they will tend to sprinkle in a little bit of vintage in their inventory. Whereas the older time dealers that maybe just do this show primarily, the ones that have been doing it for a long time, if they do vintage, they don't sprinkle in the modern with their stuff. They stick with primarily vintage. So I think that may play a little bit into it, because I think the newer dealers, they at least will sprinkle a little bit of vintage in with the modern. Not all of them, but a lot of the better ones and bigger ones do for sure.
Yeah, and they're smart to do that.
Yeah,
although it can be good if you're a buyer, right? Because these guys don't deal in vintage on a day-to-day basis, so you might be able, and they tend to be more flexible. The older dealers, quite frankly, like, look, we've all had this experience where you go to a card shop or a show and you see a card that's been there for, since the dinosaurs roamed the earth in their case, and you're like, well, you're never going to move it because you're never going to price it right. Versus the newer dealers, they're all about turning over inventory and quick movements of cards. And so they seemed to be more willing to deal. Let's just get into that part of the conversation that I wanted to have with you about the National. I mean, we both admit prices were all over the place, but generally I would say they were on the high end in terms of sticker price, right?
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah. And I've said this in my videos about the recap, but I haven't said it to my podcast crew that's out there. I didn't pay sticker on anything, and Andy can attest to this. He was my roommate the whole week. I bought a lot of stuff. I probably bought, from our friend group, I probably bought more single items than most of them for sure. That's not a bragging thing. It's the fact that I had a lot of different interactions with dealers to buy cards, and I didn't pay sticker for a single card. In fact, if they wouldn't move off sticker, I moved on down the road. I found them willing to negotiate, but the prices were already so high. Some of them I just went, well, that's not even a chance, because we're so far away from each other on where I would be willing to buy it and you would be willing to sell it.
Yeah, and for everyone out there listening, we kind of had a running joke in the room that Mike couldn't go an hour without buying an item. And I'm not sure that we were too far off, Mike. I mean, I think each hour it seemed like you were picking up something. It may not be like a big item, but you were picking up something almost hour by hour, right?
I made the most of my time.
You definitely made the most of your time.
And I'm not a buyer that just buys things to buy things.
No.
I'm a collector that's filling I should never say needs. That's never the right word. Wants in my collection. There's always something I'm looking to add to a project that I'm working on. So I have a long list, let's put it that way, of things that I'm looking for. And so what's great about that is I have a lot of things to look for. But let's focus on one item that I did pick up, and that's the 53 Bowman Color mantle. I ultimately bought a 3, very nice PSA 3 that I actually didn't find. And that's the other thing. You can walk around that show for 5 days and you'll still not see everything. And the booth that I ultimately bought this card from, I had walked by half a dozen times and hadn't seen that card that I ended up buying. But the 53 mantle journey for me was the Bowman mantle. I didn't buy the tops. I still need the tops mantle. So if anyone out there wants to just send me one, that'd be great. But I'm going to hold my breath for that.
Yeah.
The Bowman mantle, though, was something that I'm working on the 53 Bowman Color Hall of Fame run. I still needed 2 cards. I needed the mantle and I needed the Duke Snider. And I said, I'll worry about the Duke Snider later. I really want to focus on the mantle because the National is a great place to buy that big card. It's a great place to share that experience with your friends. It's a great opportunity to flex isn't the right word because that's not true. It's just enjoy it with your friends. And I remember big cards that I bought in the past and who I was with at the National when I bought them and who helped me pick them out and discern between the different copies that were out there. And I must have looked, Andy, I swear, man, I looked at 15 or 20 Bowman Color mantles, all of which were overpriced relative, because I was looking in the 2 to 4 range. That was what I felt comfortable paying. And I knew what those comped at. That's a huge thing going into the show like that is if there's a big card you're looking for, you should know or have an idea at least of what you'd be willing to pay for a card in a certain grade. And look, at those grade levels, 2, 3, 4, maybe you can speak about not all 2s, 3s, and 4s are created equal, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's really important because especially when you get into like that lower to mid grade, the eye appeal of the card can be vastly different. Like, I mean, there are some PSA 1s that may just have like a tiny pinhole or something, and otherwise the card may look like a 5 or a 6. And then there's other ones that are 1s that I mean, it's only a 1 because you can't grade it any lower, right? I mean, it just looks like it's been in a kid's back pocket, maybe went through a washing machine. I mean, it can have all kinds of flaws. And yeah, you obviously, if you're a dealer, you can't expect to get the same price for that one as the one that just has like this tiny little defect that's gonna, lower the technical grade of it. So what was your thought process and then ultimate decision making on picking the mantle that you did?
2 things. Eye appeal, like you said, which again, I cannot stress enough Andy's point of how critical that is. And doing that in person versus a scan on eBay or some other website is critically important. And I don't want to minimize that point. You're absolutely right, Andy. And so eye appeal and price were the biggest things to me. I would have taken a 4 and obviously would sell higher than a 3 if the relative to comp number was better than I could find on a nice 3. If that makes any, hopefully I'm explaining myself properly. Do you get what I mean? Like if the difference was
it's kind of like, is the juice worth the squeeze type of thing, to go up that grade. Is the eye appeal of this one that much better to warrant the price difference, basically?
Yeah. And I'm willing to pay up for a very nice looking example of that grade. I'm willing to pay on the higher end of that spectrum of the prices on that grade. But I always want it below comps. And it's not because I'm going to flip the card. It's because this may sound silly. I like to leave feeling I got a good deal, right? At the end of the day, I want to feel like I made a good purchase there. And that if I died the next day, my wife could at least get her money back or make a little bit of coin on the card. Hopefully I'm not dying tomorrow, but I don't know that. So my process, eye appeal and price. price relative to comps is probably the better way to put that. And so go to a dealer. I see you have a 53 Mantle. What's your number on that? Is typically what I would ask. And most of them would, there was one I looked at, it was a 4, and he had it at 2,900. And those are really about 2,200. I'm like, but it was a nice 4. Hey, would you do 2,200? No, I can't do that. You know, you get that all the time. No, I can't do that. I love I have more into it than that. That always cracks me up because I think that's not my problem.
It's totally not.
I'm not going to pay for your mistakes of buying a card too high. You know, sorry. But that's not what they're selling for. And a lot of times I'll show dealer comps and stuff, and sometimes they're amenable to that. Sometimes they are just look at it and like you're crazy. Like, I don't care what it says on there. This is what I'm selling it for. I'm like, okay. It's really funny when you can do a buy it now for a price that's lower than there. Like, I could literally go buy the card right then. And here's what they'll say. They'll say, Andy, they'll say, well, you don't have to pay taxes here. And I counter with, or shipping, right? Taxes and shipping. I'm like, well, you don't have to pay eBay fees either. So don't give me that. Ironically, the eBay fees are higher and a better deal for the dealer than not paying taxes and shipping is for me. So they're actually a net win on that too. And look, it's too late. The National's over. We can't get into negotiating tactics, but this is just good food for thought for people as they're going to any show and trying to negotiate any deal are these things. But, you know, it's like, I don't know if they think everybody in the hobby is new to the hobby, but like, man, this is not my first rodeo. You know, this was my 5th National. It was your 10th National. We know what we're doing and I'm just not going to overpay for a card just because the dealer thinks I should for whatever reason.
Yeah.
So it was a lot of that, a lot of, hey, I'll give you this. No. It's funny. There was one I was about to buy. Josh, Rated Rookie, was with me, and I was about to buy one. And then I got a text from another friend, JT. Hey, I found that. Have you bought one yet? No, I haven't. And again, this is a half a day, which at the National, show time is precious time. Floor time is precious time. There's only so much of it. And so I try to be as efficient as I can. And so half a day looking for one card is a lot. So that was a time when, I probably picked up a few things along the way, Andy, just to keep the hour thing going.
I know you did.
Yeah. I probably, you get distracted. It's like squirrel. Oh, there's a cool card. There's a cool card. And you can't help but get distracted sometimes. But I was trying to stay focused. And JT was like, stay focused. And he was telling me that, and he was helping me look. He's like, we're going to go find you a mantle. Like, he's like, we're going. And then Josh was with me, and I almost bought one in a 4. I can't remember the particulars of what his price was, but my price was, I think it was around 4. No, it wasn't a 4. I'm sorry. It was another 3, but it wasn't a nice looking 3. And it was like $1,400 he was willing to go to. And I really just, I was really struggling. It wasn't crazy out of comps, but it wasn't a deal in any way, shape, or form. I was paying fair market value for the card, which you might out there say, well, why wouldn't you pay fair market value for a card if that's again, I want a deal. Like, I'll wait for a deal. I'm very patient. It's the long game, right? So anyway, JT found one. The guy had it for $1,250. It was a very nice looking 3. And I ended up paying $1,200. I didn't need to negotiate a lot because I was already below comps, and it was what I would consider to be at least upper half of the 3s that are out there. From the stuff, certainly from the stuff I had seen and the examples I had available to me in Chicago. So I bought it, and was thrilled to add it. And that's the thing. If you get to the next day and you're not happy that you bought that card, you probably made a bad decision. That buyer's remorse is real in cardboard, just like it is in buying a car or anything else.
No, of course it is.
Yeah, right. If you're not happy the next day that, man, I'm so glad I picked up that card, then you need to keep searching, and or if the next day, if you didn't buy it and the next day you're really kicking yourself that you didn't go buy it. We had a friend of ours wanting to buy a 52 mantle, and I'll keep his name out of it, but he went back to buy a card and it was gone because it was a good deal and he didn't jump on it. And that's always the struggle, right? It's this balancing act of act now or act later. It's I'm not saying it's an easy dance to do, but we all struggle with that, right, Andy?
No, I mean, I don't know how many times throughout the years I've, like you talk about be patient, right? I have the opposite end of the problem at times. Like sometimes I feel like I'm too patient. And so a lot of times when you're too patient, you can overthink it. And then by the time you finally get to the point where you're like, all right, I'm doing it. It's gone, right? Somebody else acted quicker. I mean, so there is this balancing act, between being patient and then, just almost procrastinating, being too patient a little bit. So yeah, I've dealt with that for sure. But you got the mantle, you're happy with it. You got a great deal, I think. So all is good, right?
Yeah. And it's funny how one example that I can't believe, I was just walking by a table and looked down. The guy didn't have much stuff in his showcase, and there was a 51 Bowman George Kell sitting there. And I look at I think I need the George Kell for the 51 Bowman run. Sure enough, I did. It was a very nice PSA 4, and he had it listed for $15. And I was like, oh my gosh, I just spent, and this was not long either after or before, maybe before I bought the mantle, but I had this mantle price and how much I was going to be spending on this mantle and of my budget. And it was kind of weighing on me. And I see this card, I'm like, why can't I just find more cards like this? Because it was $15 was the list. I offered the guy 10 just because again, I told you I refused to pay sticker for anything. Although that would have been a great deal at $15. I mean, shoot, how much does it cost to even grade a card nowadays, right? So he took $10. He said, sure. And I was like, oh, that was the best. That was my favorite pickup of the show, which sounds silly. I got all these great cards. What's that?
That was an easy purchase, right?
It was easy and it was cheap. I don't mean bad cheap, inexpensive. It was
right.
It was a great $10 to spend because I got a great vintage card for a great price. And again, I just wish there was, I didn't find a lot of that. I have found a lot of that at previous shows, really super good deals. Those were much, much harder to come by. The other point I wanted to make, and you can certainly attest to this, is the deals were there. Like people, were the dealers hard? Yes. Were prices high? Yes. But if you looked hard enough, and that's, some people don't have the, like you said, you're sometimes too patient. I think most collectors are not patient enough. But if you looked hard enough, my point is you can find the deals. I was talking to a guy in the line at PSA going to pick up the 2 cards that I got graded on site, which by the way were a 48 Bowman Musial, which got a PSA 4, and a 50 Bowman Jackie Robinson, which got a PSA 2.5. I did well on those cards, given what I paid for them raw. The cost of grading, even at $250 a card, well worth it to get those cards back immediately. It was great. So I get that people think that's nuts, and you're entitled to that opinion. I was thrilled to death. But there was a guy in the line, and he was asking me, we were just talking about the show. He doesn't follow YouTube or podcasts or anything. He doesn't know who I am, which is 99% of everyone in America. But he was talking about, man, I found some good deals, and I haven't mind paying sticker. And I'm like, I did the old, if you're paying sticker, you're the sucker line to him. And it wasn't to be insulting. It was to be, you have the leverage, you have cash. He has a card, or she, the dealer has a card that they're trying to move. Believe it or not, you have more leverage than you think. And I think we think that we can't be that way, that it's insulting or whatever. These guys do this all the time. I think it'd be hard to insult most dealers. They're pretty thick-skinned, and you can just walk away. And I said, hey, walk away. If you don't find it, whatever you find is not rare. It's out there. You can find it, unless it's a 1 of 1 or a super low numbered card. You can find it again. And he found me. We ran into each other on our last day of the show, which was Saturday, and I had talked to him on Thursday. And he said, oh my gosh, you are so right. You were so right. I didn't know I had that much power to be able to negotiate offers. And then how many times after you said it, I found cards that I was looking for that I found over and over again. You gotta pay attention to these things. It was fascinating to see that play out that way. The fact that I even found that guy, or that he found me, and we ran into each other in the sea of humanity that was at the National, was in and of itself a miracle. And then for him to point out those things, again, none of this is brick to the forehead stuff, right? It's all pretty common sense things. But in the moment, we get what happens to us, Andy? We get all emotional. We get all excited.
And I mean, like, a perfect example of what you just said was the George Kell you were talking about. You see that card, $15 is a good deal on it, right? But why pay 15 if you can ask him if he'll take 10, and he will? I mean, the worst he can say is no, and then you pay 15.
That's right.
I mean,
it would have been a card I paid sticker for sure. No doubt.
Right. I mean, if it's a great deal, why not make it better if you can? I mean, there's no need to pay more than you have to. That's the point, I think.
Yeah. And again, don't have the confidence to ask, I think, is what both Andy and I are saying. Don't be afraid to ask. They're not going to get pissed at you or anything. Again, they do this probably all the time.
Well, and I think that's something that you gain that confidence dealing with dealers with experience, because you brought up earlier that sometimes, they will tell you, oh, I can't do that. And my line to them is always, you can do it, you just won't.
Great. That's a great point.
Of course you can. Of course you can do it. Nobody's stopping you from doing it.
As our great friend Eric says, we're offering cash money for cardboard. They can choose to take it, and every dealer has the right to sell every card they want for whatever price, or to offer for sale every card they want at whatever price they want. And we have the opportunity to say yes or no. And that's so
true.
It's a fun dance. It gets to be tiring, honestly, especially at a show like that where dealers were much less willing to negotiate. But I want to bring up another point that people can do at a show to potentially get better deals. So put this in your little Rolodex of things. If you talk to a dealer and you're telling them about a card that you're eyeballing, telling them why you want to own it can really grease the wheels to a good deal. I have found, and I found this at this show, there was a dealer, his table was called the Polo Grounds. So if anybody out there went to the Polo Grounds, it was a older man and his wife. Hey, the French fries. I'm getting told my dinner's ready. Which is great. I'll go do that later.
That sounds good.
Yeah, French fries and pulled pork. You're missing out, Andy. You went home a couple days too early.
Now I'm hungry.
Come on down. But this couple, and I went around, I was eyeballing some cards. Hey, what about this? And he said, those are really great cards. And they were. He had some amazing stuff in his showcases. And first of all, showing knowledge of what you're buying, that you kind of know this stuff too, ingratiates you to the dealer, being able to share a story about a player or what they meant to you, or maybe your dad or whatever. And the last thing I'm telling anyone to do is lie. Do not lie. I think that is incredibly misleading and unethical. But I was telling him about my 4-decade set, and he couldn't believe that I was doing this project. And I pull out my binder. I had a binder with all the 4 decades, and I'm showing him, look at all these cards I already have. And, oh, I need that one, and I need that one. And he saw that it was going, I think, to a really good home. He said that specifically, these are going to a great home, I can tell. And he said, I really want to help you along in your quest to finish this project. So he gave me very, very fair deals. There were actually a couple of cards that were way below his sticker price, but actually above comps because they were such nice looking examples. Some 53 Topps cards that I bought from him, a couple of a Clemente that I bought from him, that I was eyeballing. I was trying to complete my Clemente run, and I was telling him about that. Oh man, this is the last. It was the 63 Topps Clemente. This is the last one I need to finish I'll have every Clemente card. Dealers want to help. We think they're not human, and they are. We think they're these, pricing robots that are just dictatorial about their cards. Man, he couldn't have been more eager to see these cards. He's like, is there anything else you need? Like not genuinely trying to make a sale, but genuinely trying to help me work towards my quest. I just thought that was so cool.
Yeah, man, and it's just striking up a conversation with dealers, just being nice to them. I mean, because they're, like you said, they're people too. So we expect them to respect us and be nice to us, and I feel like we should do the same because they get treated poorly a lot by potential customers. They get told, oh, that's terrible, so they hear that stuff all day. So it's refreshing when somebody comes up and is just nice to them, asks some questions and, has a good conversation.
Have you had experiences with that where that has helped you get a better deal on a card?
Absolutely. Like, if you're a huge fan of a particular player, set, team, whatever it might be, and you strike up a conversation with them about that, like you said, they want that card to go to somebody that's truly going to enjoy it. The last thing they want to see is their card a few tables down from them at a higher price. That's what they don't want. That they don't want to give you a good deal so you can make money off of it. They want to give you a good deal because you're going to enjoy the card.
100%. I think that the key here is passion is infectious. So if you display and evoke passion, they're going to feel that. If it's authentic and real, if you're not BSing them, which I hope people wouldn't do just to save a few bucks on a card. But if you genuinely feel that passion, it'll come across, and I think you'll be surprised at how much room you can get on it. And I bought cards from him. I finished a deal. I went around the corner. Oh, look at all this great stuff. I need this and this. And I ended up doing an even better deal on those. And those types of experiences really make a show for me, where you can get a lot of great stuff knocked off a checklist with one person that's in it with you, that's enjoying it along with you, that process. Because it's long days, man. And we were tired mamma jammas, weren't we, after every day of the show?
Yeah, and to your point about the passion, I mean, passion is hard to fake. And most dealers that have done this for a long time, they're going to know if you're being real with them,
Yeah.
They can see through a lot of the, the BS type stuff where somebody's just trying to, get a steal from them so they can go a couple tables down and sell it for more or something.
As we finish up here, I want to tell Andy what a great time I got to spend the whole week with Andy. We roomed together in 2019. We roomed together in 2021. I think we're going to room together in 2022. Pretty sure.
That's the plan.
We've already booked our accommodations for 2022 in Atlantic City.
What kind of degenerates are we?
We're crazy, I guess.
I mean, we're like a couple of days removed from this show, and we're already making plans for next year.
Hey, it gives us something to look forward to. And I think as collectors, that's always a good thing, to have something to look forward to. And I'm super looking forward to it, seeing everybody at the show and experiencing it with so many great people that we've gotten to know. If you want to see all the cards that I got, go to YouTube. My channel is Baseball Collector there. The podcasts are on Bench Clear Media, and I do a lot of other stuff on Bench Clear Media. But my core collecting things, and when I talk about that, I do that on my kind of original channel. which is baseball collector. Very, creative title, baseball collector.
It really is.
But that's what I do. I collect baseball stuff. So that seemed reasonable. But go check those out. You can check out all the things. I try to be very transparent about the prices I pay for cards and what they were listed at, because if anybody wanted to look up what a card goes for, they can go do it. It's not like I'm holding any secret if I don't tell them, right?
No, the knowledge is out there, especially in this day and age.
For sure.
And on the flip side of Mike's story, if you want to go and hear about all the cards that I tried to buy at the National, you can go to my channel. She blinded me with refractors. And I have some funny stories about some cards that I attempted to buy at the National.
Yeah. And that's a great point to finish on. You're not always going to find everything you want. And that's okay. Especially, I cannot emphasize this point enough, guys, especially if you're there sharing the experience with people who have the same passion about the hobby as you do, whether they're your friends from your hometown or your brothers, your relatives, your mom, your dad. It enriches the experience more than I can possibly tell you to do it with people that you love. Andy and I have both been to shows before where we didn't know a whole lot of people. I can't even imagine doing a show like that now. I would be bored out of my gourd, I think. And not that that's bad. Look, I'm not trying to say that going to a show is still pretty fun, whether you're with other people or not. But man, it enriches the experience to share it with other people.
Yeah, if you want to have the best experience possible, then definitely, become a member of the community and, make friends, make those relationships, because it makes all the difference in the world. I mean, even with the buying of cards, you can get somebody else's opinion. Like they can find the card that you're looking for, like happened with you, Mike. So it just makes everything better.
I want to read a text that I got from a gentleman that I met at the show. His name is Chris, and he's watched me on YouTube and listened to the podcast and stuff. So I'd never met him before. He'd never met me. He doesn't comment. I didn't know who he was. And he came up to me and we shared some thoughts about the hobby and thoughts about everything. And I just enjoyed talking to him so much. And he said, "Thanks for your time at the show." And he said, "I had a wonderful time Thursday night where he got to meet a lot of other fellow like-minded collectors and start making those connections like Andy's talking about." And he said, "It makes collecting so much more fun." And it does. That's the simplest statement you can say. It just makes collecting more, as fun as it is now, it's more fun with your friends, right?
Funny story about that. If this is the same Chris that I'm thinking of, I actually met him as well at this show. And yeah, he actually watched one of our videos where we were talking about a particular card. And then the next day he went to that table and actually purchased it.
Yeah. And now he got to meet the people that encouraged him to do that. Right. This hobby is great, right? We've both made great friends, probably lifelong friends at this point through this hobby. So connect somehow with somebody, find that group that you mesh with. And I had some people tell me, "Man, I don't want to go to the show because I'm kind of socially awkward, or I'm kind of an introvert." Well, we're also we collect baseball cards, for crying out loud. Are we that? Like, you're gonna find somebody you can connect with, I promise. And it's just a community that's very welcoming, and everybody likes what people do, so appreciates what other people do and how they collect. So come out of your shell. I'm encouraging people to come out of their shell and go do these things, because you will not regret it. I cannot imagine a scenario where you would regret doing that and reaching out and branching out a little bit. Agreed? Is that the same encouragement, Andy?
Absolutely. And, once again, just thanks to everybody out there, like all of our friends that we already knew, people that we met this past week. Like Chris was a great guy, very enthusiastic. He was just having the time of his life there. And that's part of the experience too, is just seeing other people enjoy themselves. And I get just as excited like watching you or Josh or Eric or any of our friends pick up a big card. To me, that's big to watch, just to see the joy that it brings. And to me, that's part of it.
I totally feel the same way. And what a great note to end on. Andy, thanks for being on the show again. It's about bloody time I had you back on. That's my own fault. You're kind of like, you just need to ask, right? And
it's great to be on here.
Yeah, it's great to have you. And hey, guys out there, if you have any questions, leave them down below in the comments. If you're on YouTube watching, if you have questions or comments or thoughts about this episode, you can go to my Instagram, which is Baseball Collector Mike. Send me a PM. I'd love to talk to you. I'd love to chat with you. And we'll catch you guys on the next episode. Thanks again, Andy.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mike.
What should people out there do?
Keep collecting.
Amen to that.